Today on Locked On Canadiens, Marty has now gone on the record and said that Kirby Dach is going to be the number 2 this season. So, how does that shape up the bottom six? We're going to talk about that up next.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting fanduel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. Ian, there was some media done by Marty today, and we have some idea, I think, of how this team is going to look, at least the top six. So we are going to talk about the bottom six today, but also we are going to do our division stack-ups. How are you feeling about this team? I'm going to ask you this every day until the season actually starts.
It was pretty good. We didn't get our obligatory Laine Hudson was on the ice first today post, but we did get videos of Ivan Demidov stick handling while sitting in a chair on the ice while waiting for his video to be taken for like the scoreboards and like the RDS, graphics package. So I'll take it. I will take what we can get at this point. We're real close to the season starting. By the way, we usually plug this at the end, but let's plug it now. We do a mailbag every week. We're recording ours as you're listening to this today, so Thursday. So send in your questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We'll get to them for tomorrow's episode.
Also, Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok. All right, let's talk about this Kirby Dach thing. Now, I don't want to get into the whole, does he deserve it? Like, is this going to work out? Marty has said that he's going to put Kirby Dach as a second-line center to start the season. This is what we know. Like, we're not going to debate the merits of that or have any optimistic or pessimistic takes, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to try to see how the bottom six stacks up, because personally, and I always say this, there is such a thing as an elite bottom six. And I think the Montreal Canadiens are working on that. I think the acquisition of Bolduc, who could easily play on the second line, but who will most likely, because of who Dach is going to play with, will most likely end up on the third line. It really, it shows that the Canadiens really know what they're doing in that regard. And you don't want to end up losing. You don't want to be a top-heavy team that ends up losing because your bottom six can't keep up. So today, what we did want to do is we wanted to kind of talk about what does the bottom six look like as of now. Like, no preseason games have happened. No training camp has happened. Nobody has grabbed a spot. So Ian, let's just first get out of the way. The second line is going to be Ivan Demidov, Kirby Dach, Patrik Laine to start. That's generally how it's going to go, right?
Yeah. And I know people are talking about the merits of this. Does anyone else fit in that spot that the Canadiens currently have? I know people keep saying put Jake Evans as second line center.
No,
that's I love Jake Evans. That's so mid. You can't do that.
No.
This is an upside play for Kirby Dach to take that role and run with it. I think what's going to be different this time around is that Kirby Dach is not going to have to really drive that line solo. Like before, he was playing with, Juraj Slafkovsky, who offensively was still coming into his own and still trying to figure things out. And yes, while there's going to be a little bit of that with Ivan Demidov, they're different skill sets. They're different players. He's, at least to me, a lot less raw in the, offensive category than, say, a Juraj Slafkovsky, and he'll be able to move. And I think Laine is going to be healthy and motivated to come in and have a great season. I think there's a lot of potential for this line to work and for this line to not put all of its pressure on Kirby Dach. So I'm glad that they've kind of staked their claim, flag in the ground. This is what we're doing. It's like I mentioned at the golf when we talked about the golf tournament. It was very much they were preparing Kirby Dach for the season by coming out and saying we expect he'll be ready. Marty saying he had a great summer. He looks great. It's up to him now. Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton at the end of the season saying it's really up to Kirby Dach how this summer goes. to now being like, okay, he's our second line center. We looked around this summer, didn't find anything we liked. This is our guy. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm very much, I think we're Team Kirby on this one. We want him to succeed. It is still a question mark, though. This is not a tap-in. It's the best situation that they can create with the roster they have now.
To me, it was the only thing they could do, right? At this point. So what does that make your bottom six look like?
Yeah, I think all of this comes down to whether or not Alex Newhook can play center. If Alex Newhook can play center, it means that you're able to play Jake Evans on the third line, or fourth line rather, as the fourth line center, probably between Anderson and Gallagher. But if he can't play center, then you're going a third line of potentially Newhook on the wing with Bolduc and Evans down the middle, which I don't hate. I really like that idea as a line.
Yeah.
But it means that your fourth line center is probably Joe Veleno, which, maybe he can do that. It remains to be seen. His penalty killing especially remains to be seen. It just quite literally, he hasn't done it. So it's the Canadiens and the top six are deeper than they were last year. But in the bottom six, they have more holes than they did last year.
Yes, absolutely. Until these guys prove that they can A, play together, and B, complete the tasks that the other the players were doing, right? Like defensively on the penalty kill. And I don't want to keep harping on the penalty kill. We haven't seen anything yet.
Right.
But does this also open up an option for somebody to come up from Laval instead to be the fourth line center? And I'm thinking specifically of either Kapanen or Owen Beck.
I think the challenge with those two is they're both righties. And the Canadiens, I think they need a left shot centerman who can win faceoffs. That's why I think they're desperately hoping Alex Newhook can be that guy. Because, right-handed centerman Nick Suzuki, Kirby Dach, Jake Evans. That's three of your four. They kept rolling out Christian Dvorak last year because he was winning a ton of draws and a lefty, and they could, it was helpful for them to be able to put him in a spot where, a lefty can win the draw towards the boards instead of the middle of the ice, whatever they like to do on the faceoffs. I think, Owen Beck and Oliver Kapanen, they're kind of victims of what most people would see as a nice thing to have. A right shot center is not something that a lot of teams have in spades like the Canadiens do. It's not quite the rarity that a right shot defender is, but it's, it seems like it's up there to have a guy like that. So, I think that's mostly their undoing is the way that they shoot the puck. It's not anything other than that. Yes, their skill level is not to the point where I trust them in that role, but I'm talking like long term. How do they get into the roster when, down the middle, it's righty, 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 righty. Like it's not easy for them.
It's not easy. Absolutely. So what do you like? I have a little bit of nervousness about I was going to call it the Armia line. The Anderson Army is not here anymore. The Anderson, Gallagher, whoever line. Like I have a little bit of apprehension about that because I don't know that they're going to be able to replicate what they did last year with someone different.
Huh. I'm bullish on that line still, on that combination of Gallagher and Anderson, because they just make the smart, simple play all over the ice, and it's just max effort all the time.
Yeah.
Anderson, they've simplified his game. When he was playing with Suzuki and Caufield, he had to learn how to be east-west, and he's never going to be that guy. When he's playing lower in the lineup, Josh Anderson can just be north-south and be very, very good at going north-south. So I'm less concerned about that line. That line to me makes a lot more sense with Evans in the middle of it than it does Joe Veleno, in my opinion, which is why I'm kind of hoping that Alex Newhook shows up in camp and goes, yeah, I can play third line center. I can win, I can win 50% of my faceoffs.
Yeah.
That's
really, I did the work.
Yeah, that's really all. They're not asking him to go out there and win 60% of his draws. If you're winning 51%, just win more than you lose.
Yeah.
That's really all they can hope for. Keep it a coin flip, and you have to trust that your guys will get the puck back.
don't be dramatically bad is essentially Alex Newhook's assignment. And
Yeah.
to be honest, like I haven't really seen anyone talking about what he worked on over the summer, right? Just the like good, it's good to be back kind of thing, like skating with the guys, blah blah blah. So I don't know what he did over the summer. But if I'm the Canadians, and also the last episode of the rebuild is not out yet, so I haven't seen it yet. So I don't know what they told him to work on at the end of the year. I don't know what
Yeah.
they told him his future was. I don't know what they told him to work on. I don't know what he's worked on, right? So it would be a really good and pleasant surprise if we come back and like he's just spent the summer just straight up working on his face-offs, because I think that will dramatically increase his usefulness in a way that other tweaks to his game might not, honestly.
Agreed.
All right, we're gonna leave that there because we have to finish our division stack up roundup. I don't even know what we're calling it. But when we come back, first we're gonna talk about Boston, and then finally the team we saved for the last is the one that we A, hate the most, and B, potentially fear the most. And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. A short while ago, one of our listeners, Jacques Facepunch, asked us to do a side-by-side comparison of the Habs versus the other teams in the division. We started with the best of the best, which was Florida and Tampa, and then we talked about Toronto, which I personally feel, I don't know even if you agree, is a step behind those two teams in terms of depth and potential. And then we discussed Detroit. We also talked about Buffalo. We didn't go in order of how good they were or anything like that. I think we talked about them in the order of like how much impact they're going to have on the Canadiens season, right? Like we know those good teams are going to be good and claim those spots. They're potentially beat the Canadiens during the regular season, all of that, right? Like we know Detroit has not passed Montreal in their rebuild. To me, Boston, and we know Buffalo, whatever happens, they've got great players, as you pointed out, Ian, and they're going to find a way to screw it up, right? So for me, Boston is the great unknown quantity, and Ottawa is the greatest threat to the Canadiens' ambitions this season. Would you agree?
I think so. I think it's because we'll get to Ottawa in the second segment, but like Boston is just like I don't know what to make of them
Yes.
because we had all been saying for years this team is going to fall off eventually. They're going to fall off eventually, and then they like fully fell off. Like there wasn't much gradual about it. Just a few seasons ago, they were putting together the greatest regular season in NHL history, and now they're this a team that last year at least smartly realized they were going down that path and stripped it down to the studs, very quietly rebuilt their prospect and sort of a draft pick pipeline. The problem is I don't think that they are better today than they were at the beginning of last year. The one thing that if you're Boston and you're hanging your hat on is that Jeremy Swayman is going to have a training camp and come
Yeah.
to next season ready to play, because that wasn't the case last summer.
There was
He
so
was in a
much
contract
drama.
holdout. So much drama with that contract. The president and GM of the team, like essentially, not even essentially, just negotiating through the media with him. Like it was a bad look for a team that like has a habit of running guys out of town, and it seemed like that's what was going to happen with Jeremy Swayman, especially since they forfeited all leverage they had in that conversation by trading Linus Ullmark to the team we're going to talk about in the next segment in Ottawa. What do you think Boston thinks Boston is good? I think that's an important question to ask. Like, does Boston think they're a playoff team?
I think Boston thinks it's a bubble team.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't think Boston thinks that they're coming in and they're going to like match up with or keep up with Tampa or Florida or Toronto. I think that Boston thinks it's a bubble team. I think Boston thinks that it can wrestle out one of those wild card spots. And you know what? I don't necessarily disagree with them. If things go right for them, it's possible. I just personally think that, and this is going to be one of those times where it's like famous last words. I just think that Montreal and Ottawa have the edge on them this season.
Yeah, I think so too. I will say Boston treated this summer like they think they're a playoff team. The Tanner Jeannot contract they handed out was ludicrous. $3.4 million for that player until 2030, and the first 2 years have a full no move clause. Like that's our full no trade, which I guess is slightly different. They spent money on I believe Sean Corrali, Michael Eyssimont is a Bruin now. Like those are Bruins players. Like I
Yeah.
see that. They'll have Charlie McAvoy healthy, which is not what happened last year. He got hurt at the Four Nations, and then the Minnesota Wild doctors completely screwed up his season. Very, very odd, that whole situation as well. But I don't see a lot of depth here. Pasternak's still going to be good for 45 goals. That's a team that if they get going, especially at home, you're worried about them taking off. But I think that they underestimate, the regression that their lineup has gone through and what it's going to look like next year without Brad Marchand. This will be the first full season without him. They traded him last year.
It would be like a Montreal without Brendan Gallagher.
Yeah, in a way. I think I see them finishing just above the Red Wings and the Sabres, and maybe giving teams like Montreal and Ottawa a hard time late into the season. But ultimately, it's just not enough, unless, of course, Jeremy Swayman goes nuclear and is just that guy again. I think that's goaltenders are the great equalizer, right? I mean, in Calgary, that team should not have been anywhere close to a playoff spot. They finished the season with more points than the Canadiens did because Dustin Wolf was incredible. That can happen.
And
So
got signed to an incredible contract that right now is like crazy, but like in a year or so, it's going to be a steal.
And that's probably where a lot of the hangups were with that negotiation was, the Bruins were like, that's way too much. And he's like, but the cap is going to go up by an absurd amount in the next few years. In a few years, it's going to be like, I'm making $4 million. Like, why are math is hard for some people. I think they really struggle with the idea that a bigger piece of a bigger pie is the same thing as a smaller piece of a smaller pie. And I think that's still true with the way that just fans interact with these contracts. And I warned them about Jake Evans because I thought that contract was going to be bad, but he took a discount to stay in Montreal. But like, we're going to have sticker shock the next few years with some of these contracts. The Connor McDavid deal. It's going to
be like $20 million.
The Kaprizov deal. They apparently offered him a contract to make him the highest paid player in NHL history. And he was like, nah, not enough. Like, we're going to have sticker shock. So get used to it. And if you're a player, I think it was the advice Ray Ferraro had, which was as soon as you sign your deal, don't look at any other ones. Like, don't look at the ones that your teammates are signing because they're going to get more money than you.
Oh man, that like every time I see that, I hear that, it's like I think of Nick Suzuki. That's the person I think about every single time. We love Nick. But one of the things that I do kind of am concerned about with the Bruins is that they just refuse to die, right? And that's something where like they like last year, right? As you said, this offseason they acted like they were a playoff team, right? Whereas for me, I would have rolled over and like tried to tank, right? So there's something about Boston that they just won't go away.
Yeah.
And they will ruin your life at the most inopportune moments.
Yeah, I think they're too invested in the team that they currently have, right? Like there's a lot of money tied up in McAvoy, in Pastrnak, and now in their goalie in Swayman. There's a lot of money tied up in that. So like it doesn't, and they're still relatively young. Like it doesn't make sense for them to fully tear it down without trading those guys, which they could have done, but they chose, you know what, we're gonna do the Boston or the thing Washington just did, where we'll rebuild on the fly and see what we can do. I don't think they're done doing that. Like, I just look at the roster and it seems kind of incomplete. That's not to say that they won't figure it out, but going into October, that's sort of my impression of their roster. Like, it's who's their number one center? Is it still is it Pavel Zacha? It can't be Pavel Zacha. Is it Elias Lindholm, who they like don't like having? They're trying to get rid of. He has a full no move. Like, that's not a great situation to be in.
No. But yeah, any last thoughts on the Bruins before we turn our attention to our most, I don't know if it's even our most hated team. It's the team I disdain the most.
Yeah. With Boston, I want them to be, I want them in Montreal to be good at the same time again.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun back in the, late 2000s, 2010s era where, you can count on them meeting each other in the playoffs, and you can count on them viscerally hating one another, which is, I think, something that's been missing from this rivalry for a bit.
It was more show than sideshow, and now it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And for the on ice to take the focus again, I think they both need to be either really good at the same time or really bad at the same time. Preferably good.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, we're going to talk about how Montreal and Ottawa stack up. First, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives like you and me. And if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I really like that Monarch showed me where all my money was going and all the incidentals that I was buying, little treats and things like that. They were really, really hampering my financial future. And thanks to Monarch, I've learned how to spend more smartly, more wisely. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right. It is time to talk about the Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators. And I have to be honest with you, kind of been dreading that one. Just dreading the whole season series. I'm going to the game, the preseason game against them in I think it's October 4th. And I'm dreading it because whenever the Canadiens play Ottawa, somebody gets decapitated.
Yeah, I'm always dreading that. And I every time I hope cooler heads will prevail. And then the game starts and you just get the impression immediately that won't happen. Like, there's these two teams. I think currently, of all of the Canadiens' rivals, I think these two teams hate each other more than any other combination of Montreal times team. Like, I just think there's so much vitriol between these two. If it reminds me of that 2013 playoff series. There was that was the bug-eyed fat walrus year.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Ryan White going absolutely sicko mode year.
Didn't they hurt Lars Eller in that series, or was that a different series?
Yeah, and what's his name? The coach Paul McLean's called Rafael Diaz player 61. He blamed him for the pass that set up Lars Eller's injury. Lars Eller, who, by the way, I believe is an Ottawa Senator now. So gross.
Boy.
Like, why did that happen, Larry?
Who allowed that?
Apparently Larry. Apparently he allowed it. Like, I look, I don't make the rules. I was begging for him to come back to Montreal. That would be the perfect Christian Dvorak replacement, would be Lars Eller. But I feel like he has burnt out on the idea of playing in Montreal, and reasonably so. His time here was not particularly fruitful for him personally. The team was quite good when he was here, but that's a different story. Ottawa, I kind of think, had a similar summer to that of like Detroit, but because their core is already in place and very good, I still see their summer as a positive. They didn't screw around with what they had, right? Like they're just like, we know that this is a good team. We're going to let them kind of grow naturally. I respect the summer that they had. They looked at the team and they're like, look, we're not that far off from being a regular playoff team every year. Let's just run it back and see what we have. I really liked that for them.
I agree. I like that for them, but like I hate it for me.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, like I really like when you look at their rebuild took longer than they claimed it was, right? They kept
Yep.
saying the rebuild was done or the rebuild was going to be done in 5 years. It took them maybe like 10 years instead. But they've been really smart in the last couple of years. And that's really where we talked about, like they kind of have somewhat of an internal cap. That's really where Montreal is going to be able to have the edge because I
Mhm.
think Jeff Molson is willing to write blank checks as long as Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are bringing in players that'll help them win, right?
Right.
So but overall, I think that the experience that Montreal had versus Washington in the playoffs was more valuable than the experience that Ottawa had against Toronto because what Ottawa did was lose their minds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Going back to the summer they had, the one thing that I missed for Ottawa was they were hardballing Claude Giroux for quite some time. Remember
Yes.
that was a big question mark was whether or not they would get that done. They ultimately get it done just before free agency opens. But like that was one where you're kind of looking at it going, he's stepped into Ottawa and really has been a big part of them making that switch, right?
Yeah.
You think like you mentioned their rebuild took longer. They false started, right?
Yes.
I mean, Pierre Dorian was like, "We're done, it's over," and it very much
Was
wasn't.
not.
They took not too long ago, they took a shot on Alex DeBrincat, getting him out of Chicago, thinking he'll sign. And he's not going to sign here right away, but maybe if we can make some noise and get into the playoffs, we can convince him. But he had his heart set on Detroit the second he was going to be a free agent. He knew I'm going to the Red Wings. So it took them a while to get here, but still that core is impressive. Brady
Yeah.
Tkachuk is a guy that every team would fall over themselves to go get. Stützle, as
Including
much
us.
as it's Stützle, as much as we make fun of him, like that's a guy anyone would fall over to have on their team. Brendan Gallagher would probably have to grin and bear it, but like that's the reality of it. Like is a supremely talented hockey player. Are there any holes in that Ottawa lineup that you think you can exploit? Like, are you looking at what they have? Like, what's their Achilles heel?
I think their defensive depth, I think they have like really great defense, but I feel like it falls off, right? That's where I'm seeing it. And also like truly, and this is just my observation, like I felt like Olmark wasn't fully there last year in the way that he was when he was with the
Yeah,
Bruins.
he had big moments, and he
Yeah.
had stretches where he was excellent, and then he had some stretches where it's like, boy, it doesn't look like he can stop the puck at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm looking at their defense though. Like they have again, like Shabbat, like Jake Sanderson, incredible players, right? But then I'm looking down that lineup and I'm like, I don't know if I'm super convinced, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
one the thing that I look at is something I've actually harped on for a little while now, which is power play opportunities. I believe, and I'm looking this up now, so just really effective podcasting. I believe over the last 3 seasons, the Ottawa Senators have had the most power play opportunities. Yeah, so last year they had 269 power play opportunities. This is for Scott. Nice. The next closest team was Dallas. They had 19 fewer power play opportunities.
I think
You know,
it's all because Stützle's diving. I'm just going to say it right there.
I don't think that's all of it because he's not diving a billion times and getting a call every time. However, I will say that when NHL referees catch on to this sort of thing, they turn off the tap. Right? Like they're just okay. Well, it looks like you guys are making fools of us. So guess what? We're no more calls. And
Yes.
usually the pendulum swings are wild. Nazem Kadri in Toronto used to be able to draw penalty calls all the time, and then referees went, you know what? You're making a fool of us. You're getting nothing for the rest of your career, and that's kind of how it went. So like, I don't know if that happens to an entire team, but I would imagine, because again, it's been the last 3 years they've led the league in penalty minutes, or in power play opportunities rather. That's going to dry up eventually. That's not going to happen forever, because it's humans who call this game. They don't like to be, if there's one thing referees hate, it's being made fun of or made an example of. Like, I think it's interesting that Ottawa has led the league that many times over the last few years, and it's still happening. If I had to bet on one thing being their undoing, it's they get fewer power play opportunities. The power play is good, 23% last year.
Oh yeah,
But
they've got incredible players.
Yeah, I think they get fewer opportunities this year. I don't think they get as many as they have in the past, and it'll be interesting to see how badly that hurts them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for me, the thing that I'm most scared about with Ottawa is not even all of the like physical play and all of that. Like, I think their top pairing, their top defensive pairing is really good.
Yeah.
I think that's the part I'm worried about. Right?
Yep. And again, it's just that natural progression and experience. We all talk about how much experience the Canadiens got out of that playoff series.
Mhm.
I shudder to think what Brady Tkachuk learned from that first round. I shudder to think what Ridley Gregg learned from that first round.
They learn to
It'll
be
interesting to
violent.
see how they come back. Yeah, exactly. And do they need to do more of that? I don't think so personally, as somebody whose face is being punched through this. Like, I don't think that they need to be more violent, but that's up to that's their prerogative.
Correct. All right. So, like, I think the biggest indicator with Ottawa is you look at the number of players that they have that were invited to camps, to Olympic camps.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's a lot more
Yeah.
than you'd expect, because you're like, even like 2-3 years ago, I didn't think Ottawa was a threat to do anything but annoy me
Yeah.
and kill Josh
This could
Anderson.
be this could be a playoff matchup before we know it. A 2-3
Yeah,
playoff matchup.
really
And
do not want.
I'm
I
gonna be
would
sick.
rather play Florida.
Yeah, me too. We can beat Florida pretty easily, and there's not really a ton of emotion involved. With Ottawa, it gets nasty both on and off the ice. It's not
Yeah.
a fun environment to be a part. By the way, while we're mentioning that, if you're listening to this show, be better. Like, rise above that stuff. Don't do that. Be cool. Be cool on the internet,
Yes.
or else. That's the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so to me, like, Ottawa's like really their biggest rival right now.
Yeah.
Their biggest obstacle, their biggest rival, their biggest threat. So that's why we saved them for last. Like, again, I'm not saying that Florida, Tampa, Toronto aren't threats. It's just that they're in a different league, and Ottawa and Montreal are in the same league. And there's areas where I feel Montreal has the edge, and there's areas where I feel Ottawa has the edge. Right? So it's in any other, like, in a vacuum, this is exciting, right? But in reality, like, we're worried about injuries. We're worried about, lots of players just losing their minds on the ice. Like, it's really not a safe environment.
I will. If I can make one nerd reference to close the show, when you boot up a new Pokemon game, you're playing on Game Boy, you're playing a new Pokemon file, and you're getting your first Pokemon from Professor Oak. His nephew is your rival. He's your peer. He gets his first Pokemon at the same time. His name's Gary. Gary is Montreal's Ottawa. Like, that is how this is. They're our Gary. So, like, we're going through the ranks at the same time. We're checking over each other's shoulder to see how the other one's doing. We're checking in on each other the entire way. They're our Gary. I hope the 12 people who play Pokemon and watch this show understood the reference.
Understand it. Well, because we talked about Ottawa, like, there'll be a lot of Ottawa fans listening, and maybe some of them are Pokemon nerds too.
There you go.
But yes, please note, I did respect your team. I said all good things. Mostly.
Yeah, we're scared.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Remember, tomorrow is our mailbag episode, so please send us mailbag questions. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. You can also send us all kinds of emails, pictures, anecdotes, anything to do with the Montreal Canadiens, your thoughts, your feelings. You can also find us all over social media and send us mailbag questions there. We're Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, and Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky. You can also obviously leave mailbag questions in the comments as well. We want to thank you all for listening. You can also find my co-host all over social media at Maybe It's Ian. You'll find me at The Active Stick. The mailbag is tomorrow, and we will see you then.